Hi and welcome to another episode of All Talk with me, Dan Pearson, and today it's beautifully sunny, but it's not sunny with the Range Rover P38 that I showed you last episode, because that car has got lots of mechanical and cosmetic issues. But today it's all about the cosmetics, because if I can't correct this paint, then I'm afraid it's off to the painters. Can we do this, Snake? Fist bump. Boom. Let's go. Now, under normal circumstances, a P38 Range Rover is the epitome of upper-class British aristocratic luxury. The harmonious V8 providing a burbling backdrop for Sir S.O. Johnson Sunak McShell to drive from their country retreat to the Houses of Parliament. This one doesn't quite meet those standards. Paintwork on this car was described as in really good condition, and I have to laugh because it's really not. It came to me from a trader. I bought this without actually viewing the car, and unfortunately when it arrived from the transport company, it was certainly less than excellent. I'll show you around the car now and give you an idea on all of the little faults and details and issues, and that's without even going through the mechanical problems that this car had. It's one of those cases where I feel like I've been slightly bent over a barrel. Whilst I have to give some allowance for the car being 23 years old, this paintwork and condition was described as very good, and it isn't. Let's go through some of the defects. First of all, there are little scratches and scrapes all over this car, and as you can see here, there's a lot of marks that have come in. Some of these are sanding marks that have happened. There's also, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a lack of line here. I'm not quite sure why. It looks like it's been blown over the edge of the bonnet. These need painting, that is a fact, but as you can see, there's just lots of really poor washing practices that have happened to this car. And again, there's lots of bits that have had paint. This is incredibly dull and very flat. There's not a lot of reflection there whatsoever. Here we've got bumps which have come about from moisture in a spray gun. That door has had paint. And again, these marks continue all the way down. Around here, we've got some rust to deal with on this tailgate, scratches, PDR dent. There's also some rust up here, so this is going to have to be repainted. One of the bigger scratches down here on this bumper, and that is quite heavy, so we've got those to deal with, and lots of this faded trim. The story is pretty much the same on this side of the car, and again we've had some poor paint work on here at some stage. It's not quite lively enough. These handles are very faded. This is a little bit better, but still. Here again, probably one of the worst bits. There's lots of orange peel in that bit, and that's had some paint at some stage. If you take a look at the bonnet, you'll be able to see a lot of the marks and damage that are on that paint. Unfortunately, that's not all of the problems either. There's numerous other issues. The trim, the grills, it looks terrible from the side. It's dirty as hell underneath, and they need restoring. The inside, although it's better than the outside, it's still not brilliant by any stretch of the imagination. There's scratches everywhere, faded badges, faded trims. Even the side trims, which usually last a little bit longer, are still fading and looking a little bit weathered on this particular car, which is a bit of a shame. There's a crack in the front bumper, which I'm probably going to have to deal with and fill and repair. That little lump in the front bumper is strange. There are various deep scratches there, which won't come out. Crack in the rear light, these are quite cheap, so that's not a big deal. As I say, the paintwork isn't brilliant at all. It really isn't. On this door here, the door is catching onto the wing, so that needs dealing with. The quality of the paint is bad. The quality of the top lacquer is not great at all. So we've got quite a bit of work to do, and I'm going to detail this car because I want to use it, quite frankly. We've got a crack in this bumper here. We've got a bulge going on here that I'm not quite sure what the hell's going on with that. Big shout out to Nicola for giving me a hand, just getting as much of the loose dirt and grime off this P38 as possible before we move on to the next stages, and it just gave me a little bit of a chance to get some of this very attractive B-roll footage. First point of this is to get the car nice and wet so that we can use some citrus pre-wash on, and then we're going to cover this car in snow foam and agitate the snow foam with some brushes into these bits here just down the sides and get all of this kind of debris out of it. And then we're going to hand wash it. But the name of the game is to get as much of that dirt off before we make contact with this terrible paint. Thank God you can put your kids to work. Can you beat a gratuitous citrus pre-wash slow-mo shot? By the power of snow foam, I think we can. I'm pretty sure that Nick has got a few of these type of videos in her collection. Better not check her internet history. A small brush just to get into all of the nooks and crannies and agitate all of that dirt. Then it's time for a cheeky shampoo in a scene-friendly Maguire's bucket. So we've got the Range Rover now pre-washed and snow foamed, and we've rinsed all of that off. Now it's time to get a hand wash on this. Hopefully we've got the majority of the dirt and the particles off with the processes we've done so far. But this is now a little bit of Valet Pro shampoo, and we're just going to hand wash this and try and get the rest of it done. Starting at the top of the car and working down. Single bucket here, but we've got 3 mitts and using each side to cycle through the top, sides, front and rear of the car. Now Nick's 5'9" and I'm 6'3", but we still had to drop this car down a little bit to reach the roof. Back in the day, these were an imposing thing on the road, that's for sure. Now it's time to rinse off everything that we've put onto the car, all of the shampoos, etc. Nick's going to crack on and get some alloy wheel cleaner on and get those cleaned up as much as we can. So we've ran the clay bar over the car now and got as much of the extra contaminants off as we can. But that's going to put little marks into the paint as well. And we're going to obviously have to polish these out. So Nick's just rinsing this car off. We pull the car inside to take a better look, and as you can see there are marks all over, etchings, swirls, scratches, defects. There's all sorts of issues all the way through this paint, and the bonnet's probably not the worst bit, but this is pretty bad. This is a kind of like a lacquer line all the way over the edge of the bonnet. So that's a single pass with the Chemi heavy cut pad and the Menzerna 400, and we can see already that's quite an improvement. Some of these heavier defects, these heavier scratches are not coming out on a single pass, which, to be fair, is to be expected. So we'll give this another pass and see if we get a little bit more correction happening. I'd hoped to not have to wet sand the whole of the car, quite frankly, because it's just a massive job. So I taped off the bonnet and started doing some tests with different pads and different compounds to see how much correction I could get. I was using a couple of different pads, including a Lake Country pad and also something from Kosh Chemi, which is a heavy cut pad, and the Menzerna 400 primarily. I did get some decent results, but I couldn't get where I needed to be, and ultimately decided to go the wet sanding route. I'm going to have a little go with some wet sanding, some bigger defects up here, and I'm going to have a little go with wet sanding on this side and see what sort of result we get. Now this residue means that we're taking a little bit of the clear coat away, which is exactly what we want. We need to wipe this away and see where we've got to and see if we've got an even surface. So this was a Menzerna, and this is our process with the wet sand. As you can see, there's a lot more clarity there. So my sanding strategy with this car is to use a 2000 grit Rupes disc followed by a 3000 grit Rupes disc to take the sanding marks out, and then going to compound that with a Lake Country microfiber pad and some Menzerna 400, and then we're going to finish that off with a finishing pad. As you can see from this time lapse, what we're trying to do is get an even hazing on the car. I could have used a stronger grit, I could have used a 1500, and that would have given me better defect removal, but I'm just so worried about the paint because that clear coat is really thin, and I'm really mindful of the fact that we can easily just go through it, and we probably will in certain parts on this car. As you can see, I'm going to spray on a little bit of water. It's called wet sanding, but it's not really, it's damp sanding. We're just going to literally lighten the surface and keep working away, trying to replicate the same technique as we go through from panel to panel for consistency. So basically this is where we were before we started. So this is a paint on the right hand side of the bonnet. I've used a DA, but I've not refined this back. So this is where we are. And this is where we are now. And this is not even refined yet. Look at that. That's just had one pass with the rotary. And that is so much better. Wow. With the process settled on, I started to make some good progress at a very solid pace. Little did I know, a minor disaster was about to strike. It appears my Dash 6 Pro is kaput. This is a good chance to laugh at my lack of intelligence, as I wishfully hope that the socket's not working or the extension's failed. We have a bit of a problem. Our machine polisher is not working. Better figure this one out. Test the socket. Well guys, it's now a couple of days later, but for you it's a matter of seconds. But my Dash 6 Pro is now fixed, thanks to some help from one of the detailing forums, and also thanks to Dominic at Clean Your Car in Yorkshire. I happened to be going to Yorkshire, told Dominic that I'd got an issue. He told me to come on in and very kindly sorted me out with some carbon brushes. So thank you to Clean Your Car. If you guys are looking for some detailing products, give those guys a call. Honest Yorkshire folk, for sure. So they will give you very sensible, good, knowledgeable advice on the products. Back to this, the P38. We're now back in the unit, and I'm keen to crack on with some work on this and to try and get as much done as we can. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm not going to waste any more time on video. There's a lot of car to wet sand here, and for most of it, we've got pretty much all the car to do. We've only tested this, part of the bonnet, and actually there's still some polish residue on here, so it needs a bit of IPA. So we've got this Dash 6 Pro dual action polisher that we're going to use for the sanding. And just for information, we've got an interface disc, which effectively is going to go onto here. And then our sanding disc is going to attach onto that. So let's do that now. As the lacquer already shows signs of burn through on some panels, 2000 grit and an interface pad is about the least aggressive method I can get away with. So there we go. That's what that looks like. It's these bits here where you can see these darker raised areas. That's where we've not actually levelled out the clear coat. So that's standing slightly proud. Kind of have to work this a little bit further, but we've got to be so careful on this because we've got the leading edge of the wheel arch here, and also this curvature as it comes up, if you can see from above, makes it very, very tricky, and that's why the interface pads are helpful, but you still have to be very, very careful around this. This is flattening down okay, and I can feel already that is a little bit smoother. Over here, still a lot of texture, and you can see the dimpling in that. It's pretty bad. The reality is that that's already dimpled and it's already orange peeled, and that's because it's had paint blown up onto the edge of the bonnet, and that's why the paint thickness readings are very different across each of these panels. It was evident that this car had had different amounts of paint on different panels at different stages in its life, which makes correction a little bit harder and a little bit more panel by panel. So, this door has also had paint, but I think at a different date to the paint on the front. It's not got as much orange peeling anywhere near, but it's very dull, it's very flat, and it's never really been refined back. So we're going to take the same approach with the wet sand, but this might need a little bit more than this door has had. And that's because this door actually is, I think, original paint. So let's crack on and see where we get to and see what we can do on the next couple of stages when we're using some cutting compound after the wet sand. Let's do this. I'm going to wipe a little bit of this clear coat residue off and see where we are and see if I've got a flat enough result from the wet sanding with the 2000 before we start to decide. But I am going to do this back panel because obviously I'm in a rush and it's much more efficient to do the whole car with each stage. So my aim is to try and get this side done so that I can move things around. We're tight on space in the unit, and then I can tackle the other side of the car, and then I'll tackle the rear, etc. So just off camera, I've just gone over the whole side of the car with a RARE P38 grit sanding disc to try and take out some of those sanding marks created by the 2000, and that's been on the 3-inch DA. I'm now at the stage where I can use a rotary, a late country pad, and this is the exciting bit because we can compound out the marks from the 3000 and we should see a result even before we've refined it. So right now I am a little bit excited because this car is getting a little bit closer. We've done nearly a side. Well, we're halfway through a side. Kind of. Let's carry on and let's see if we can make this thing look a little bit prettier. Let's go. This is a late country microfiber pad again, and I'm priming this new pad by putting on actually a lot of product, and I'm going to rub this in really very vigorously indeed, and that's to try and coat every single fibre on here so that we're getting the maximum compound cut when I start to try and get these sanding marks out. That brings me on to the next point. Because I was in a rush and slightly lazy, I didn't spend as much time with the 3000 grit as I should, so that left actually probably more sand marks in there than I would have liked, and now I've got more graft to do with the rotary and the compound to try and get all of those out. As you can see, I actually am genuinely working at this speed. It would be phenomenal if I could, that's for sure, and would make detailing and paint correction a damn sight easier. With my time now getting really tight, I better crack on as quick as I can. I've gone over this bottom panel here with Benzena 400 on a microfiber pad just to see what result we got, and it's actually not looking too bad. Here though, we've got quite a significant scratch, and I'm going to have to wet sand this, so we're going to wet sand this now. With a 3-inch pad, I normally prefer to use 1500 grit rather than the 2000, but too scared. Let's go with the 2 and then the 3, see what we can do. We have improved the look of this, but we're not going to take it all the way out. I just daren't go that far. We're back here with the Range Rover P38, and today I'm back in to try and finish off this side of the car. We've got some defects that we've created with the rotary, which we're going to polish out with some different pads and different polishing compounds to make sure that this has got that kind of really shiny gloss that's going to make this really pop in the sun. And we've still got a few little areas that we might have to go back and look at again, but we're going to take it a little bit at a time. I'm not going to waste any more time because this has got to get done, so come with me, let's crack on. So I'm just wiping off any of the polish residue with a little bit of panel wipe so we can see where we are, and I've got some little bits to do which I'm going to use the 1-inch polisher on, and that's to do just in here and just behind here, so I'll try and see where we get to. Keeping this little Auto Bright mini polisher just next to me and doing the little bits that you would struggle to get into as I go along. The rear of this P38, this panel here, has still got some defects in, but they're not absolutely terrible, but they are niggling me a little bit. Now there's probably about a 90% correction across the board, but there were some areas where there were some minor scratches and swirls. But also there were a couple where I've tried to attack it with the wet sand before and it's still not got them out. So I've got a couple of options. I can go back and I can try and hit this again with another wet sand, but localise to try and get those major scratches out, or I can do the whole panel again with a cutting compound, which is going to put the marring back into it. The question is whether or not I use a rotary or whether or not I use the DA. I think I've decided to do the whole panel and see where we are, and I'm going to use the DA on this, and then I'm going to try and refine this and see where we get to, so I can understand more about what I need to do with the refining process, which pad to use, which polishing compound or which finishing compound, to try and get this to look really nice and plenty of gloss back in there. So no further ado, let us go and do this. Boom. So different option for this. I've decided to go with this Kosh Chemi pad and the Benzena 400. So I'm still using a cutting pad and a cutting compound, but it's not going to be as harsh as a microfiber. So I'm hoping that we can still get these last few remaining defects out with this, and then we can refine back. So let's make a move. I've just had a little inspection of this, and I'm going to have to go back for the 3-inch with the microfiber to get into some of these areas. I've popped some masking tape down the middle of this panel, and that's because I'm now at the stage where I want to test how it responds to a polishing compound, a finishing compound, and maybe a couple of different pads. So we're working with a white polishing pad on this bit here, and this is just refining this back. We're using a Menzerner, sorry to get my big bald head in the way, Menzerner 3000, which is, you know, a final finish. Although the car had already been washed outside, obviously I didn't mask everything up, so we had flung a fair amount of polish around in a rather excitable fashion. So we gave the windows a quick wipe down with some panel wipe or some IPA, just to get some of that polish that's been kind of splattered all over the windows wiped off. Nick did the inside with some glue remover because it had had some tints on and somebody had not really cleaned the inside properly. So once that was done, we could start polishing the outside. Nick set about it with a 3-inch microfiber pad and some Menzerner 400. However, having run out of time, we knew we'd have to come back another day to get this project finished. Well guys, that's it for today's video, because there's a lot of work on this car, so I decided to make this into a 2-parter. I know that can be a little bit frustrating, but it does give you an excuse to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon to come back for the next video when I show you this P38 finished and in all its resplendent glory. And I'm not even sure what that word means. So click the bell icon, hit the thumbs up button, comment below if you've got anything to say about this P38 and what else you think I should do with it. I've got more content coming with this car as well. So I will see you in the next one.